Board. We will get rolling. All right. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Grow Your Path to Wellness. This week, we are going to be hosting someone really great that I met in the last year networking, Kevin Strauss. But just to catch you up on last episode, we had Johanna Lynn, and she talked about the family imprint and how understanding the impact of family history can transform the work that you do with your client. Or those that you're working with. And it was all about epigenetics and how we pass trauma and traits and everything through our DNA. It was a really great episode. So make sure you go back and check that out. This week, my co-host Kelsey is not here with us. She's traveling back from some vacation time, but I'm excited to be here with Kevin this morning. So thank you so much for being here today, Kevin.
Thanks, Amanda. I'm really excited because we've been talking about doing this for a while, so I'm glad we're doing it.
Awesome. Well, I have this wonderfully written bio here that I'm going to read about Kevin, and then you feel free to plug anything else about, why you're here, why this topic is so passionate to you. So Kevin Strauss is an emotional health and innovation consultant and CEO of Uchi LLC. He focuses on what drives behavior and is dedicated to making life easier and happier. Kevin's career began in biomedical engineering, which was finding problems and solutions which led to 80 patents, 10 plus research publications, 2 innovation awards, and his book, Innovate the 1%. Kevin has worked in human behavior for 2 decades and has identified emotional health as its driver and human connection as its primary supporter. Uchi is an app he created to nurture authentic connection, and Kevin is also a 22-year injury-free Ironman triathlete and coach. So that's a whole lot of experience and expertise and background and accomplishments. So obviously you put a lot of work into this topic today. Is there a personal connection to why you're so passionate about this as well?
Yeah, well, that's a great first question. To dig into something for so long and to really dive down to what I think are the real roots. Yeah, ultimately, I'm really just trying to solve my own problems or main problem. Yeah, and that's really where it stems from. The story I talk about or that I share about Uchi is how it started. The impetus was observing an argument between a parent and their teenage daughter and just how they were just butting heads and clashing. And that's what I talk about. But it took me 15 years of digging and digging into this whole topic of behavior and my own behavior and the world around me when I realized that, oh, this is me not feeling heard by my parents. And Uchi is a tool that I created so that I could feel heard and understood and loved by my parents. I know my parents love me, but it didn't come across in a way that I could receive it or the way that I needed to receive it. And feeling heard and understood, which is what Uchi's all about, um, that was me just trying to solve my problem. And you mentioned the biomedical engineering. I'm a problem solver. That's what I do. I'm a creator. I'm a solver. Um, I take ideas and I make them into real solutions, like tangible solutions that you can actually use. The simpler, the better. And yeah, I just want to be happier and less stressed and less conflict. And I want that for everyone. And it turns out that my problem, I don't think is really so unique.
Yeah, you're working to meet a basic human need, right? And I shared about the last episode we had, like we have had these family traits and behaviors and unhelpful parenting styles and all sorts of things passed down for generations. And we're just now, I think, doing a lot to uncover that and train how we're doing that and do things differently. But yeah, connection and being understood is a basic human need that I don't think a lot of people realize, and we invalidate that in ourselves a lot for having that need. And in my world, I think it gets pathologized when they aren't given the right tools to meet that need, get creative, right?
Oh, yeah.
In the
Yeah, or
survival,
we find other ways to compensate for not
right?
having that need met.
hmm And then it becomes a maladaptive response or
Oh yeah.
pathologized, stamp this on your record. And it's like, hold on, we didn't even give them an opportunity to understand the inner workings of what their basic
Yeah.
existence needs and give
Yeah,
them.
I love that you say pathologized, and then it becomes your identity, and you mentioned, we pass it down through generations, and I want to be clear that we're not passing it down through our DNA. That is something that can happen. Trauma can be passed down through DNA, but it is such a small portion. This genetic component is maybe 10% of the equation. We are passing it down through the environment that
Mhm.
we're creating from that, or that we got from our parents, who got from their parents, who got from their parents. It's just all they know. If they only know how to make this certain kind of food, then that's what we're going to pass down through the generations until someone really, goes outside the box to create and eat different kinds of food, or so on, and different other behaviors. So we try and we try and assign a disease or genetic component or something that, oh, it's not my fault, it's not in my control, I'm not a bad parent. And it's not about being a bad parent. It's just about, okay, you did the best you could do, you did what you know, but you didn't know any better.
Right.
And that's what you're just passing down, in the environment that you create. So we need to get past this whole pathology, disease, genetic, moral failing judgment
hmm
approach, which is clearly not working, especially in the mental health arena. And I'm air quoting that because, and we're going to talk about this, I'm sure. I don't think humanity has a mental health problem at all. And our real problem is emotional, and they're very different, even though they get clumped together still in the world of psychology and mental health. They are very different. And until we separate them and define them correctly, we're going to continue to struggle with the kinds of behaviors and struggles that people are having worldwide.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I love that you said out of the box ideas. That just stuck with me because we just did our annual vision board workshop, and that was like a giant thing on mine. Is years ago, a couple years ago, one of my clients' testimonials said, like, I appreciate how Amanda's always thinking outside of the box with different interventions and resources and things. And I was like, that's my word for the years, because like even though some people aren't accepting, right? We were talking about this before we started recording that sometimes we're the lonely voice in the room of like, no, this is the thing. This is what can help us. I need to be insistent about that because the world needs it. So, oh,
The
this is
world
so
does
good. All
need
right,
it.
let's start
Yes.
getting into our bullet points before we get too distracted because we could make this a whole series, honestly.
Yeah.
So you already just talked about this. What is the difference, but what is emotional health and then how does it differ from mental health?
Okay. So based on, over 20 years of digging into this and really asking why, countless dozens and dozens of times trying to dig down, where I have landed is the definition that I think is far more accurate in how we as a society understand mental health. I'm going to go with mental health first. Is I define mental health as a person's ability to focus, concentrate, think clearly, perform cognitive tasks. Basically, it's your frontal lobe. It's your reasoning, decision making, your conscious mind thinking through, and your ability to do that. And that is what I think the mental health industry, even, going back to like Freud, and the dawn of modern psychology, but it even goes back to like, Aristotle and Socrates and back then. But it's I think that what the mental health industry is really based on is this premise that if a person is not in 100% control of their thoughts, feelings, actions, and behaviors, then their brain must be broken. Because why would anybody do a behavior that was clearly destructive to themselves or others?
Mhm.
If you're doing a behavior and you can't manage it, you can't control it, like drinking to excess, then your brain must be broken because you know better. Why would you ever hurt other people? That's not a good thing to do in the world. So your brain must be broken. If you can't control, because there was a school gun shooting last week, um, if you can't control all of your behaviors, your brain must be broken. And then we're going to assign it like, oh, it's not your fault. It's genetics or it's a moral failing
Let's
or
pathologize you. Yeah.
right, it's a disease. You have a disease like alcoholism's a disease. It's not a disease. So that's what I think is wrong with the entire mental health industry is that it's based on a false premise that a person's in 100% control of their thoughts, feelings, actions, and behaviors. Okay, so let's put a pin in that for a moment. So then the definition for emotional health, most people think emotional health is all about all the different emotions that a human can have and your ability to recognize your emotions and understand your emotions and manage your emotions. Again, back to your control over your emotions.
Mhm.
But if you look up the definition of emotional intelligence, I just defined it.
Yep.
Emotional intelligence is your ability to recognize, understand, and manage your emotions. Okay. And that's fine. Let's use that definition. But emotional health, where I landed, and I won't go through the whole genesis because it took me a while to really figure this out. But where I landed is the definition of emotional health is your ability to give and receive love, connection, and belonging.
Mhm.
And I'll just say love going forward, but what I mean by love is love, connection,
Yeah.
and a sense of belonging. And with those two definitions, it's like you're feeling it's your emotional health is really rooted in your subconscious. You don't think love, you feel love, right? You feel a connection. You don't think a connection, you feel a connection.
Very
You
primal.
know, so that's where I land with this definition, and then it really gets rooted in our basic human needs.
Mhm.
And I've only been able to identify 6 basic human needs. So we know that everybody's an individual. We're all different out there. We're all unique. We are all unique energy in the universe, which is, we can prove that, everything is energy. This pen is energy. Everything is energy, at vibrating at some frequency. So we're all a unique energy in the universe and everybody's equal. Okay. We'll pause here because I lost my train of thought.
Take your time.
So basic needs. Okay. So if you're alive, then your physical needs are being met. I'm not saying you have a great quality of life, but if you physically exist, then your physical needs are being met to a certain extent because the spectrum of physical health would be fully alive with no disease, no issues, no aches and pains or any diseases or anything. And at the other end of the spectrum, you're dead. Okay, that's physical health. You're alive or dead. Okay, and the 5 needs required for physical health to be alive are universal. Every human being has the same ones. It doesn't matter, if you're from the US or China or England or you're black, white. It doesn't matter if you are a Homo sapien, actually, if you are a mammal, but if you're a Homo sapien, you need air, you need water, you need sleep, you need food, and you need shelter, safety and shelter, like, all the storms that just went through the Northeast over the weekend. So with those basic needs, if any one of those needs is not being met, it's uncomfortable. It hurts. You could die, right? If somebody cuts off your airway, nothing else in your existence matters except getting air, right? Nothing else matters. It doesn't matter like, oh, I want to get the new iPhone, or oh, I have to clean the garage, or oh, I have to, finish this report for school. None of that matters if you don't have air, right? Okay, so those, I won't go through all of them, but those are the 5 basic physical needs. But then there's this emotional need, that is also universal, and it is baked into our DNA. This is a genetic component where every human being needs love. Again, love, connection, belonging. And if you don't have love, if you don't have connection, you are not going to survive. It is so much harder to survive as a single person in the world than it is in a group. And this is how Homo sapiens got to where we are today. Because for 200,000 years, if you didn't work as a collective, you're probably going to die, right? You wouldn't have enough, firewood, for the fire. You weren't eating every day anyway. You could hunt and gather, but you were much more effective hunting.
We're pack species.
We are
Like
pack
we need
animals.
each
We are
other.
social animals.
Yeah.
And back to the genetic component is we are literally designed to connect.
Hmm.
There's no gene for evilness. There's no hormone for meanness. But there is a hormone specifically designed for us to connect, and that's oxytocin. And it feels good. When oxytocin's pumping through your body, it feels so good. That's like addicted to love,
Yeah.
right? And that's how we're able to bond, connect, belong, and love. But when we don't nurture that, it causes pain. When we don't feel loved, it causes pain. So if we don't feel heard and understood and valued, it causes pain. And that pain is real. And your brain doesn't know the difference between physical pain and emotional pain. By the way, I've not been able to identify mental pain in over 20 years of looking. There's no such thing as mental pain. It's either physical or emotional. And your brain doesn't know the difference. And in the absence of meeting that need and experiencing pain, a person will do anything to ease their pain, including a behavior that might be detrimental down the road, like drugs or alcohol or shooting someone or whatever. And it can easily get to the point where the pain is so relentless that you'd rather just die. And there you have suicide.
I just need to sit with all of that because there's so much to say.
It's a
Um,
lot. Sorry.
it's so no, it's so interesting because when you were talking about mental health and cognitive and frontal lobe and Freud, and I'm like, this is why we've been doing a disservice to people for so many years and why I'm screaming from the rooftops. I remember I was working in an opiate specific treatment program, and we were doing a cognitive behavioral treatment based group, like IOP group, and getting people up there and asking them to role play like, okay, I'm in a situation, think what I could do differently. Okay, then I can communicate that with my new communication skills and make better choices. And people are cycling through and coming back and getting being back in the hospital and overdosing and going to detox and going back to jail and over and over and over again. And I'm like, this is not the thing.
It's not
Like
working.
this is not the thing. It's not
Yeah.
their cognitive, right?
No.
Like they are aware that this is not helpful to them. They
Yeah.
don't like it. And yet nowhere from the time that unless you're like my kid because I'm trained that way and I want to change the
Right.
world, nowhere in your upbringing is anyone teaching the basic, I mean, even in like a biology, I don't even know where you would have learned like the basic physical needs, maybe
It's
biology,
not in there. It's not
right?
there
No
because
one's
they don't
teaching us
know.
what you
That's
need
the
to
thing.
manage this.
Yeah. You can't teach what you do not know.
Right.
And the whole mental health paradigm has been going down this path since the beginning, as far as I can tell, that if you're not in control, you're broken.
Mhm.
And you get labeled and that becomes your identity. That can become your identity at 2 years old before you even are consciously aware. Because awareness doesn't even come into play until like 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah.
And if we think and we continue to believe that our conscious mind is going to override our unconscious mind. I mean, but we know from the neuroscience that 95% of your actions and behaviors come from your subconscious.
Mhm.
I'm using unconscious and subconscious
Yeah.
synonymously here.
Hmm.
And that's in your midbrain, which is a more, which is a more basic part of your overall brain, right? You got your reptilian, your mammalian, which is your midbrain, and then your human brain, which is your cerebral cortex, which is where your frontal lobe is. But your midbrain, your amygdala, your limbic system, where your emotions and feelings are all rooted, which is your subconscious, it's all rooted there. That activates orders of magnitude faster than your frontal lobe.
Mhm.
And we continue, especially even with like cognitive behavioral therapy and all the other modalities, we continue to try and force this path that we can think our way through whatever problem. And it's not working, and it's never worked. It's never worked from the beginning. And well, I won't go into this whole thing about not evolution, but
Well, no,
how
I mean,
our species evolved. But
I would get people looking at me wild ways, you know, when I was like, "Hello, like of course this person doesn't know how to manage their like doesn't know how to navigate emotions. Of course this person is using substances. Of course this person doesn't have helpful relationships. They were never modeled this. They were never told that this is a basic need and this is how you get it. Of course. They tried this thing one time and it gave them the feeling like, you know, a synthetic
it
feeling.
compensated for their pain.
Right. But and the research is out there and you know Gabor Mate is my BFF and I'm gonna meet him someday. But you know, like people are out there talking about it, but we can't get it into the mainstream. And I think the sad thing for me is that America specifically, because that's where we are, has become so individualistic and so focused on the product and the producing and the achieving
Mm-hmm.
individualism. And then COVID came and really just like put us all in our silos
Yeah.
that we are so disconnected, and yet nobody is talking about why that is a main source of our problem. And
Because
I'm
they
way
don't
off of
know
our bullet
why.
points right now, but we're
Yeah.
covering all of them in some way.
Well,
So
they don't understand why. That's the thing.
mhm.
Is I'm sorry, they just don't get it. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I love that you mentioned the individualism word and that whole phenomenon that's been going on since basically the 18th century, definitely the 19th century.
Mhm.
And this gets to a whole nother point that I really want to emphasize, and I sort of touched on it, but now I'm going to explicitly say it. We as a species, or especially as a US society, since like let's just be conservative and say the 19th century, we have turned individualism into this massively valued commodity, right? Achievement, you mentioned achievement, productivity. These are things that we value. This is what society, this is what our culture has deemed super, super valuable. If you need help with anything, then you're weak and you're less valuable. Other cultures value different things, but they all get to the same thing. But it's really, how do we value ourselves, or how do we value each other?
Mhm.
Okay. And again, in our brain, how valued you feel translates to how loved you feel.
Mhm.
So value and love are basically equal. So what we're valuing, that we keep going after what we culturally, society, species, what we value, because that's how we achieve our love. But we
Mhm.
keep seeing time and again, and the biggest things that we value are power, money, and status, education, but that leads to status,
Mhm.
right? And ultimately, it's really power is what we're really trying to achieve, because the person in power for the last 200,000 years, but even long before that, before Homo sapiens, the person or the entity, the species in power had the greatest chance of surviving.
Mhm.
They got to eat first. They got the sleep closest to the fire. They weren't sleeping over by, the cave entrance or whatever. They got the first fur. So power represented survival, existence. But now, since not even the late 1800s, but now that survival, human existence, is no longer a day-to-day struggle, this is recent. This is, Homo sapiens have been on this planet for 200,000 years, okay? But even as recent as the 1870s, you weren't guaranteed to eat every day, right? we could not reliably source food, we could not reliably preserve food. There were no refrigerators
Mhm.
back in the late 1800s, you know, and we weren't guaranteed to survive like a winter. Okay. So when your existence, your basic physical existence is in question day to day, who cares about your emotional health? We need food, we need firewood or coal, nothing else matters.
Mhm.
But now that it finally day-to-day survival is no longer a struggle, it's our emotional health that we're not nurturing that's really compromising our our lives, and we're not as happy, and we're compensating with these behaviors, whether destructive or extremely constructive, such as, I have to be an overachiever, type A, get all A's, go to the best school, get the highest paying job, do more sports and athleticism, and be the best athlete, and so on.
It's very transactional.
Very transactional.
Very transactional.
Absolutely.
We see it a
Yeah.
lot,
And it doesn't work.
especially with like my like early 20s, like transition age clients. And then my adult, like older adult clients that have kids that age, they're just like so lost on how to navigate the world. They're anxious, they're depressed, they're disconnected, they're lonely, they don't understand why. And yet they're still like, I don't want to be doing this college program. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But yet they're like, I have to get an A. I have to pass. I have to do this. I have to
Right.
do that. And they don't realize that they're trying to meet that basic need. Oh, it's so good, Kevin. We could talk forever.
Well,
But
again, it just goes back to value, right? How do we value someone versus, because value equals love. And this really opens up a huge door. I'll just state it, the huge door about how do we value men over women? We value white over black, right? We value heterosexual over homosexual. We value Republican over Democrat, or we value Democrat over Republican. And as soon as one person doesn't feel valued, which means they don't feel loved, it triggers them because they probably didn't feel loved when they were super young. They didn't get the love that they needed, even though their parents did love them, it wasn't received by or shown in a way that the child could receive it. And boom, that's where everything spirals out of control. We get triggered and the behaviors just go awry.
and this is why therapists, social workers, we always want to talk about your childhood, even though people don't think it's relevant, because it sticks with you. It sets
That's
that.
usually where it starts. I mean, it really
Mhm.
is usually where it
Yeah.
starts most of the time,
Or
not
a
all.
really like challenging or traumatic first relationship or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Okay, before we wrap up, you need a little bit of time. Tell me about your Uchi app and how it improves connections and behaviors for people of all ages everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So Uchi is a free app. It's a social platform. It is not a social media because nothing on Uchi is public ever. So Uchi in Japanese means in group or inner circle. So the whole goal of Uchi is just to help you connect with the people who matter most to you. Okay. And it's really a way to feel heard and understood by those people who matter to you. And all you do is you answer questions, and only your Uchi friends can read your answers, and they can only read your answer if they've already answered that question. So you have to contribute in order to consume. But again, it goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, is when we feel heard and understood, we feel like we matter. And if we feel like we matter, we feel valuable. And if we feel valuable, we feel loved.
Mm.
So it's this sort of, step by step of what's really happening. But really,
Domino effect, kind of.
yeah, it's a domino effect, right? And it's just a chance for you to share your thoughts, feelings, ideas, whatever the questions are. You just answer questions. It's super simple. It's only the written word, which is incredibly powerful. We think the only way to connect is through like face to face or in person or verbal dialogue. But we have 2,500 years of data showing that two people can have a profoundly deep connection just from trading letters.
Mhm.
The written word is so powerful, and it's wonderful because you're first answering a question, in writing, on the phone app. You're first answering the question, which is journaling. And the power of journaling is already well established. So you first journal and then you share it with only your people. Then they read it. It's like, oh, I didn't know Amanda thought that. Or, oh, it's so interesting. I never thought my parent or kid would say something like that, or wow, I had no idea they thought that way. And then you tend to look forward to, oh, I wonder how, my mom's going to answer this, or I wonder how my spouse is going to answer this. I wonder how my kid is going to answer this. And it's just a day-to-day activity that's super simple. And it's amazing how quickly you start to feel that connection and nurture your emotional health, because when you address a basic human need, when you alleviate it, your behaviors change almost instantly,
Mhm.
right? So if you get air, once you get air again, everything's okay, right? Once you start getting love,
Mhm.
things get better and behaviors change and improve dramatically in just a short period of time of using Uchi. And we've published research on all that, but really it's just about having fun, answering questions, and reading each other's answers. And you do it asynchronously. So you don't have to be in the same space at the same time, like sitting around a table answering questions.
Oh, it's so good. And it's setting the foundation in another way, just like you said, like just like getting air, just like getting food, it's setting a foundation for you to like reach reach a point where you can then build upon, right? Like it might
Yeah.
not like snap make everything in your life magically better. However, it's gonna be a little bit easier to navigate and less challenging. All right, so we're running out of time here. Kevin, thank you so very much. We will share all of the links that you shared with us. Your website, uchiconnection.com. You can check out the Uchi app, and we'll have other links and ways that you can connect with Kevin in the show notes here. But Kevin, as we wrap up here, do you have any parting words, any summary quotes, mantras, anything you want to leave our audience with today?
I guess I'll just say peace, love, and connect.
Oh, beautiful. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for another episode. Make sure you turn on notifications, subscribe, like, comment, let us know your feedback, and we will see you again in a couple weeks with another episode. Take care, everyone.